Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Communication 24/7 podcast, where we communicate about how we communicate. I am your host, Jennifer Furlong. Today, we're going to do something a little different. I have never had a conversation about this topic before on the podcast, so I wanted to make sure that whomever I had on the podcast as the guest for this topic, I wanted to have someone very special, someone who understands a lot about this topic. And that topic that I'm talking about is, when you have a child or children with autism, what does that look like? What does that feel like, especially in families? And how do we communicate, in families who have been impacted with autism? So before I introduce Gina, I want to give you a little bit of her background so you can understand why I was so excited to have her on this show. And then we'll start the conversation after that. So, I looked up a couple of statistics and I was really surprised. I know Gina probably was not so surprised, but I was surprised when I looked up these statistics. The CDC's Autism and Developmental Disabilities Network reports that 1 in every 54 children in the United States has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I had no idea that that number would be so high. According to the study in the Brain Sciences Journal, parents of children with autism, and specifically mothers, which again, why I'm talking to a warrior mom today, they often experience a poor quality of life due to higher levels of stress, anxiety, depression. They often experience increased parental fatigue, negative impacts on their social life, and they have increased vulnerability to severe diseases such as cancer. So there are a lot of challenges that are presented when you are a parent of a child with autism. So the things that I'm hoping to explore in today's episode, families living with autism, what do they do to ensure that they can remain healthy and happy? And, what are some tools for communication that we could possibly, talk about, and are some communication forms better than others? And so Gina Uricchio, we have her in the studio today. I am so excited, Gina. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can start off. Would you mind telling everybody a
Mhm.
little bit about yourself? How, just your story in particular, and why is it that this is a topic so close to you and your family, and
Mhm.
why you're doing what you're doing now, in connection of autism awareness.
Sure. I live in Connecticut with my family, and my husband and I, just regular young couple, just wanted to start a family as, most young couples, have the desire to do so. And John and I had our first child. Her name is Allie, and she was born, and we had we did the usual. We bought all the right things, went to all the, right classes, sort of read the books, had the baby shower, had a healthy pregnancy, very physically fit, just very mindful, all good. And we had Allie, and brought her home, and we watched baby TV. We were in awe that we were in charge of such a life and how we were going to go forward. And um, we named her Alexandra, but right away she became Allie because of the show Ally McBeal,
Okay.
where I just loved it because it's just Ally McBeal had this quirky side about her, not knowing that she would really become quirky enough to,
Mm,
in her own personal
mhm,
way.
mhm,
And that quirk would eventually be described in a diagnosis. Like, it was
mm,
crazy. But as Allie began to kind of have just reached general milestones, even gaze aversion, how she looked at me, nonverbal gestures became my first warning for her.
Mm.
And so she was a very quiet baby and she didn't look for me often. And this was our first child. So we just were like, oh, maybe she's quiet. Maybe she's this. Maybe she's that. Then came the stages where she would be looking for me, maybe reaching up or waving bye-bye, the nonverbal gestures, the pointing, which, as we know, Jen, are so important in
Mhm.
nonverbal communication and
That's right.
how
Mhm.
how we use communication. As a student of communication, I always know that, but body language, it all, emotions, answering to her name, and that wasn't happening. So again, it was a red flag for me, the mother, but everyone around me lovingly put it off, saying that she was fine.
Mm.
Um, then it went towards, her 9 month, her words, everything that was coming soon. She'll be playing pretend kitchen. She'll want to do your hair. She'll want to play with dolls. And over the period of time, that just never happened. She developed a few words and um, she was a very quiet baby. And we just, I had all these warnings and I kept bringing them to my pediatrician and the office, I should say, and they just were dismissive about it till about 15 months when I finally went in there and I said, I was pregnant with my son. I just became pregnant with my son. And I said, look, I've got another baby on the way. I really believe that there's stuff going on here. We need to really look at this.
Mm.
And I actually I remember going into the back of what to expect when you're expecting, because well, first of all, the internet was just coming about. So if you wanted information
Right.
on autism, you had to go to like your library or encyclopedia and look it up. So I went to the back of the what to expect and I said, could it be this? What is this really? We all knew just Rain Man, really.
You're right.
I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
nobody, which was done, and there are certainly similarities there, but of course, that was a male, she was a female, and I spoke with my mother privately about it, and she was like, what does that mean? Like, are you sure? And then I brought it forth to the family and kind of tried to figure out and navigate how we were going to, my husband and I, address this situation. And immediately through the state of Connecticut, we called on Birth to Three. And
Mm.
that's where
Mm.
they can come into the house and assess your child. So I would encourage any family that's having any doubts, and
Mhm.
especially any mother that has any doubts of what's going on with their kids as far as speech and physical therapy or movement or any of those cognitive milestones. We called on Birth to Three, and they came in with developmental teachers and occupational therapists and speech therapists, and we were immediately overwhelmed. But we
Yeah.
started assessments. But back then, you couldn't even get an assessment with a real developmental pediatrician unless you got a referral, not to mention a real complete diagnosis from a psychological evaluation, which would take years, which came out of
Mm.
our pockets. So by the time she was 4 years old, she was diagnosed. She was diagnosed at two with
Mhm.
by a developmental pediatrician with moderate autism, and then she was fully diagnosed by a psychologist when she was 4 years old with being moderately affected by autism. And so there were many discussions, a lot of out of pocket money, thousands of dollars that just went into those appointments alone.
Mhm.
And on top of that, those appointments were recommendations of what we had to do, which are laundry lists of things, which became completely overwhelming to this young couple who was pregnant with their second child, who had a daughter now that wasn't even answering to her name after we had ruled out like her hearing and all those things.
Right.
And we began the trail of taking in recommendations, and we began Allie's journey truly with our family on how to learn to become an advocate, learn to um, keep her safe, learn to keep ourselves safe, explain, and always be the messenger to our families on what was going on, and being out there in society and being held by society, which at that time there was no whole being held in society. It was, people weren't really talking about autism like they are now.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that you said that I would like to pick up on. I think other parents out there would really appreciate hearing more about. One of the things that you had mentioned, with Allie being 24 now. So yeah, I mean 24 years
Mm,
ago, absolutely the amount of information that parents today are able to just Google, is so completely
mm-hmm,
different to what it was 24 years ago. I have a daughter who is, my son and my daughter are in that age range as well. My son just turned 26 and my daughter is about to turn 25. So I know what you mean by there are limited books, you go to the library to learn about becoming a parent. I can't imagine how
mm-hmm.
incredibly frustrating and alone you must have felt without having information readily accessible to you. I do wonder because at least you had that background in communication. I believe you have your master's in communication,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I do.
So
I do.
I'm sure you, as the communication person, you had all of your own things going on in your mind about communication and milestones and things
Mm-hmm.
that should be happening by now. What was that like for you emotionally? Because I think parents, even though they have so much more information that is readily accessible at their fingertips, from what I understand, it can still be an incredibly lonely and scary journey when you're wondering, you have these questions, and what that must do to you as a parent emotionally. So would you mind saying something
Sure.
a little bit about that, like your emotional journey, and how did you get through the self-doubt and I'm sure you must have beat yourself up, at some point trying to figure out what is it that I'm not doing, or should I be doing, all of those questions that went through your mind.
Yeah, and let me say that we I work with it every day still, I mean,
Mm,
it is a practice of letting go over and over. Um,
mm,
we have to do that with, parents have to do that with their children all the time, but finding out and being emotional, the emotional state of having the diagnosis. One thing that I have to say is intuitively I knew.
mm,
So I knew. So when
mhm,
we got to these milestones of when we had finally reached the developmental pediatrician diagnosis and we had finally got to the psychological end of things, I knew, and I was holding space for the rest of the, like, I held space for my husband at the developmental
mm,
pediatrician because he had not yet arrived. He knew, but to hear it from a doctor's, you know, their voice to your ears. And so I had kind of worked out some things of about this journey that was going to be completely different. Um,
mhm.
in the meantime, I'm protecting because I'm pregnant with my second child, so I'm my son. So I'm I'm which actually is a blessing because I don't even know if I would have had my son Johnny if I had known more.
Right.
And
Mhm,
he is the perfect fit for
mhm,
our family. And he was especially made to be Allie's brother. So, but I had to, one thing that is for sure is I had to take care of myself because I was pregnant. But
Right.
secondly, I was intuitively had to follow and just kind of, just dial with the phone and look up, and call into the doctor and say my truth of what, even though I
Mhm.
kept getting pushed away. And feeling alone was a real place where I started my, I would say, more of a stronger, I've always had a very spiritual, deep side to my personality, but I didn't access it as much as I could have. Um, or I had kind of put it to the side to just be in my 20s, so to speak,
Mhm.
and be free, because we're always seeking that freedom and non-constricted. But I had to really lean onto that side of myself, which I would say now I strengthen daily by
Mhm.
practicing, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, the entire, prayer, the entire gamut. So I had to lean on that a lot for myself because I was the messenger, I was the leader, I was the go-to person. Yeah, and then my husband was feverishly trying to I mean, we're a young couple, so he's feverishly trying to make a living
Mhm.
to, just make it so we could have everything that we could have that we would need to pay for because everything was out of pocket back
Yeah.
then. And, oh, you're going to need a playscape even. You're going to need this, how about a ball pit? A tent, you're just maybe a therapy swing. These
And
things are
every
like
time you're hearing
$2,000.
something new, it's like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. You can just hear the money, just going
Yeah.
out the window. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so he was definitely, but we divided, we as a team, we've always had to divide and conquer, because
Mhm.
that was the way it was. I mean, I was freelancing at home. I was doing a little bit of work here and there. Luckily, I was able to kind of do that stuff. But the focus as she entered school and as we started to get IEPs and learn about the school system, it became a full-time job. And
Mm.
then to your point, I would say 25 years in getting an education, something that, let's just say, it's not that I didn't want it, but let's just say I didn't expect to get an education like this in
Right.
autism. With,
Yeah.
what you resist persists. So
Mhm.
basically, I even was like, oh, they're asking me to learn about this and speech and, constipation and potty training. And then they're telling me and my husband, she'll never do this and she'll never do that. And she'll never play with dolls and she'll never probably have any friends. And,
Mm.
that's a lot
And that's
of,
hard to hear. That's hard
yeah,
to hear as a mother.
it's a lot of grief.
Mhm.
It's a lot of
Mhm.
grief and it's a lot of heaviness. And so, my quest always was, I guess there's a piece of myself too that it was like, how do I stay light in all of
Mm.
this and be light and feel, not let the heavy burden take over
Right.
of a parenting path that involves so much caregiving,
Mhm.
even till this day. And it shows up in different ways as adults
Right.
than a baby or a toddler or an eighth grader. But how do I stay light? How do I keep that version or that piece of myself that is Gina without
Right.
disappearing into motherhood that involved so much caregiving? Because I
Right.
had my son, and
Yeah.
I am, not only that, I am a wife, a mother, a sister, a friend, You touched on it, so well in the introduction about um, a mother's health, mother's marriages, friendships, socializing with families, what other typical families do, it's all been addressed here. It's all been
Yeah.
experienced. It's all been places where we've had to say no, places where we've had to leave, places where John and I have had to go separately.
Mm.
I've had my health journey as well with being diagnosed with breast cancer
Mhm.
in 2013, where I, when I got the call, I was like, I can't die.
Mm.
And then I realized even then, so Allie was probably like 14 then, even then, 14 years into it, I was yelling, I can't die. And then I hang up and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to die someday.
Mm.
Maybe I knew I wasn't going to die from that,
Right, but
from the cancer,
someday.
but I was like, someday. So, again, opens another road, another journey of perspective, and how do we look at this, and caring for adults with, these children, who there are many
Mhm.
now. You said the statistic, how it's
Mhm.
changed since Allie was
Mhm.
diagnosed. She was one in, I think it was 250, and it was
Wow.
mostly boys. And
Mhm.
now all those kids are 24, 25, coming up to
Mhm.
be adults. And how are we as a collective caregiving? How are we taking care of these mothers? How are we taking care of these marriages? How are we taking care of the typical child in the family that eventually, it isn't talked about, but is ultimately will be the caregiver after the parents are gone? They're
Right.
really, really
Yes.
hard conversations, and really difficult conversations, and they're sad,
Mhm.
because society, as I'm finding out, for an autistic adult, or adult with special needs, I should say,
Mhm.
all encompassing the umbrella. And we know the mental health issue in our country, but where are these people going to live? Who's taking care of them? Because
Mhm.
I'm here when Allie gets home at 2 o'clock, or if she doesn't go to program, or it was shut down, by the way, during COVID.
Right.
I
Right.
was her I was her program,
Yeah.
which leads to, an adult with autism is different than an adult, a young girl with autism,
Yeah.
because now she has become a beautiful, beautiful adult with likes and dislikes. She
Mm.
does know how she's perceived, but she also relies a lot on some time and freedom for herself,
Mhm.
and she needs it, because when she goes out into the world, like you and me, and we found this
Mhm.
out, can be very overwhelming. But
Yes.
she's contracting sensory, she's contacting, speech, she's hearing multiple sounds, she's experiencing sensory as far as smells, she's giving her best self, shining her light, but it's a lot for her to
Mhm.
communicate, to try to volunteer, to participate, to be happy out there in the
Right.
world, grocery shopping and things like that. So she needs a lot of time when she comes home to just break it all down. Similarly, when you hear, when you talk to friends, are like, I need like an hour before I can talk to my spouse before
Yes.
we get in the door, or I need, at least 10 minutes, somebody just,
Let me
I want to,
decompress. Yeah.
she needs like 8 hours of so she'll be out in the world for 4, and in, you know, decompressing. And we begin to give her that freedom, because I can get freedom. Because when
Mm.
she is little, it's like do, 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 never stop
Mhm.
teaching, get on the floor, get here. And you feared when she was left alone to her own devices, she would disappear and go into her own world and just have that
Yeah.
blank face where you just stared at her and she wouldn't say anything. And
Mm.
you're so afraid that that's going to happen that you almost put in too much, you know?
Yeah.
So you learn as a parent as you go, again, intuitively. My practice has been it doesn't matter if 5 kids at school like to go here, there, that, and like Taylor Swift concerts and loved,
Mhm.
this and that. Allie likes it this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything that Allie liked in turn, so funny, it works well for me. It's
Okay.
what I
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
and when I need something else, if I need more connection or socialization, I need to speak up and reach out.
Mhm.
So the
Okay.
loneliness doesn't come and cover me up. But that
Right.
takes
Yeah.
that takes bravery and that takes,
Mhm.
everything that we practice on the yoga mat, it's warrior poses, of course. Sitting still in Sukhasana, the mindfulness of just being with yourself and
Mhm.
being with your thoughts and letting them go, to standing in a warrior pose and being like, I've got to soften, but I want to get strong, but I don't want to become hard. And I don't want to like pull my inner thigh muscle in this
Yeah.
posture. And how do I connect with myself and learn how to come back to my body? And how do I do that when I'm not even on this mat,
Yeah.
taking on these poses in my real life?
Yeah.
So that's how I came up with the um, my business name Mother Asana, because
Yeah.
I compared it to, I was sitting with Allie with presence and purpose, and
Mm.
whether it would be for that 1 minute connection, or if I get her for 5 minutes, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to get her for 15, where
Yeah.
she's giving me eye contact and we're sitting together. uh, it's it's a win-win situation. We're connecting. I get what I need. It may not be speech and conversation, but it's maybe doing some parallel type
Mhm.
things where she's sitting on her phone and I'm sitting on my phone, but we're like both on our phones, and there's some, and I may have like a little something on the table and I'll push it nearer and then she'll push it back, and we just begin to have this little dyad of something going
Right.
on where we're connecting. And I think that's the cornerstone of, Mother Asana, is sitting with presence and purpose, and this parenting, caregiving, fatherhood, brotherhood, sisterhood lifestyle is all through connection, being the highest pose we can ever hold,
Right.
in
Yeah.
this lifestyle, in this world. And how do we
Yeah.
do that, and how do we take care of ourselves and take care of each other in the family,
Yeah.
and still have, I guess, a quote unquote normal sort of second half of life, with that, maybe not an empty nest, but having pieces of a nest, that are beautifully brought together, just as a bird would
Mhm.
make a nest.
Right.
How does it look here? So how do we all get freedom? How does my son get freedom? How does John and I as a couple get freedom? How does Gina get freedom?
Mhm.
How does Allie receive freedom? And really,
Yeah.
freedom in a house that houses autism, with all that constrictedness and all that OCD and all the ADD and all the, you know, not, the silence from the non-speech.
Right. Yeah. Um, So incredibly challenging, and that's why, I wanted to have you on the show to do this episode, because I know that there are so many families out there, so many mothers out there who will listen to this, and
Mm,
they are going to be able to connect so well with everything that you are saying. Um, I want to go back just a little bit. And I also want to remind anybody who's watching right now, if you have any questions or any comments, remember this is a live stream and we are on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. So if you have any comments or questions for Gina, please don't be shy. Make sure that you get those in there. We love to have you. We would love to have you be a part of this conversation. I know that you are connecting with so much of what Gina is saying right now. Um, when we talk about the communication between couples,
hmm
who are parents of children with special needs, and then you talked a little bit about the communication that needs to happen, with your son. So with anybody else, who has other children, in the family. What does that look like for you and your family? Do you specifically set aside time where you focus on checking in and what's going on with you? And, how do you make sure that you're maintaining that strong connection while remaining open for the other person to feel like they can bring up issues as they come? How do you maintain that
mm.
type of an environment for everyone in the family?
Well, I would say I'm the best.
Mhm.
I would say that I am the best example of that
Mhm.
because I am the one who probably speaks up first because
Mm.
I
Yeah.
feel it the most.
Mhm.
So it's that sort of e- put upon energy of, um, you know, being the touchstone in the house
Mm.
of of everything that Allie does and
Mhm.
um, is doing. I'm I'm in charge of. So I almost liken it to, believe it or not, it's almost like a marriage between me
Mhm.
and Allie, in a
Mm.
mini
Mhm.
marriage, and then
Mhm.
there's my marriage, and then there's the family.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so you you start building, these conversations, and sometimes they just come out as overwhelm of,
Yeah.
I just can't. I'm missing things. I'm not tracking things. We're not do we're, so it may just come up as a feeling of, you know, of course we all feel it. You go on
Mhm.
Facebook, you go here, you go there. You're like, well, is everybody hanging out without me?
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so Mindy Kaling's book there, so funny, but like, yeah, everyone is hanging out without you
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can't really do what they're doing because you could go to a concert, but if your kid doesn't sleep through the night, you need to be home at like, 10 o'clock. Well, I need 9 hours of sleep, in order, I know what I need to wake up the next
Right.
day, and so you're starting to realize like what's important for your body as
Mm.
opposed to what's
Mhm.
important for showing up. So your connections again with friendships and socialization become very specific to what fills you up, not what empties you.
Ah,
And
okay.
so I think that that's always been the practice in the house, for my son as well, is um, if it doesn't make you feel good, I
Mhm.
always use the the example of, it's kind of like food. Like if you don't
Right.
like that type of food, you don't go eat it
Mhm.
the next day
Right.
again, or if it makes you sick to your stomach.
Right,
So
yeah.
how do, and that's more of when he was young. And so um, he was able to, have his own life and navigate, and have his friends and have he's naturally quiet as well, more of a participant, I would say an observer participant. So
Okay.
um, he's got a keen sense of intuition and actually knows how to use it very well. Um,
Yeah.
you know, but
Mm.
he could be
Mm.
criticized, by using it too much, as anybody with an
Mhm,
intuitive sense
mhm.
could be, because you got to get out there in the world,
Right.
but obviously our system, the way we socialize has evolved so much since
Yeah.
the way he was, since he was born. Um, my husband, I would say, um, always had a career that gave him um, the chance to be himself and be out there. So he
Okay.
would have the socialization and the gratification of the socializing that we crave as
Mhm.
adults, as humans, where autistic individuals do not essentially. Allie essentially doesn't crave conversation. She
Right.
craves connection, which is why I talk about it so much in our book and on Mother
Yeah.
Asana, because
Yeah.
connection is really the cornerstone. But she
Mm.
doesn't create, and so how will she connect the dots with you is always out of
Yeah.
the box, where you better be pretty mindful or you're going to miss it. For instance,
Yeah.
on the day of my son's college graduation, which was a
Mm.
big, big deal in our house, because here we
Yeah.
have this kid, right, who now he's graduating, and that's a big accomplishment for this
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
you know, and she wasn't going to go up to him and be like, "Congratulations, Johnny." So she put on a Quinnipiac t-shirt that
Mhm.
said, Quinnipiac, he went to Quinnipiac University 2022. And she like wore it around the house the whole week of and the graduation day, she came down wearing a shirt, and she was like walking around very proud. But that was her way of showing us that she's like, I know what's going on.
Right, right. Yes. Yeah.
She's so bright. She knows what's going on. But she's not sitting down like, okay, mom, should we, get cupcakes, or, should we decorate the table this way? It doesn't come in that way. The
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
doesn't come in that way. Hence, you need to have a lot of time to listen and to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
which is part of the practice, or be that, like, as Johnny is, the observer
Mhm.
first rather than
Yeah.
the participant,
I am
and
so
yeah.
glad, yeah, that you shared that story because that is such an important piece. One of the things that I was gonna ask you about was, you talked about the differences. There's a difference between how we might want someone to communicate with us, and that may be the way we feel we're making a connection. But that
Right.
may not necessarily be the way that Allie
Hmm.
would be in tune or feel connected with you. So, as a parent, to be willing to observe and listen and think in terms of, okay, I might crave that type of communication, that type of conversation so we can talk about these things. So, how how do you communicate most effectively with Allie? Or is it more of a you really do have to just focus on in the moment what she is doing and how she's expressing herself, and then you just have to be able to adapt to that?
Well, I love what you said, in the moment, because essentially
Mhm.
that's what we have, right?
Mm, mhm.
We only have this moment, and
Mhm.
um, that's one of the best ways to quell the fears.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
and the anxiety that comes along with all of
Right.
this, or the umbrella of the entire, caring for, another person, as far as, caring for two bodies. I mean, it's like she
Right.
needs deodorant, I need deodorant. She needs to shave her
Right.
legs, I need to shave my legs. So it's like she she needs to wash her hair, so
Mhm.
I do approach her, I give her a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
And I think it's just stemmed from both of us being who we are, and that's why we're perfectly
Right.
made for each other. And it's like she's
Okay.
kind of a soulmate to me. So if I could just begin, and I think if parents can begin to look at that, um, as, you know, again, not being married
Yeah.
to your child, but having this sort of really soulful relationship of connection.
Yeah.
And my husband too. I mean, he has it with her as well.
Mhm.
He just, you
Right.
have to access it. So when
Right.
you stay surface and you just stay hard on what it's supposed to be or how it's supposed to look,
Mhm.
then you become constricted, and
Right.
your peripheral you lose it. You lose your
Yeah.
vision because you aren't giving yourself the freedom to kind of flow and bend and
Yeah.
be loose, to just go in and say, it's okay. I can
Right.
try again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm going in to talk to her or to be with her. And she's like, her line is, Mommy, walk, please.
Ah, okay.
She's more or less like, okay, um, I don't need you here.
Right.
It's her
Oh,
very polite way of saying,
saying you
shut
can,
the door,
take a walk.
or
Yeah.
she'll say, shut the door. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
Mommy, walk,
Yeah.
please. So, she hears me coming when I come up the stairs to kind of be like,
Mm.
hey, what's going
Right.
on? What are you
Uh-huh. Yeah.
doing? And but really don't go in with a lot of strong laughter or words or a loud voice. It's very soft. I kind of go in with she likes scratching, hand scratching,
Mm.
so more tactile, like going in,
Okay.
scratching her hands, um, maybe going in and patting, getting on top of her head, like giving her some deep pressure on her head, or just kind of pushing
Mhm.
at her feet, or sometimes I'll like, clean up her room and then leave like a little book out that we haven't talked about in a while, and I'll be like, isn't it funny? Like it's like if summer's coming and it's a book about summer, or I'm anticipating a discussion about snow,
Yeah.
like I heard
Yeah.
it was going to snow. I'll like put a book on her bed, and then I'll like see what she does with it and whether she wings it across the
Yeah. Yeah.
floor. Like, what is this? I don't care about this. And I'll be like, and I'll look out the window. I think it's going to snow. Oh, the book is on snow. And then
Right.
I sort of like circle in, and I'm like,
Okay.
wow, it might, probably gonna start, winter's coming. Wow. Oh, what, Christmas, we're gonna start seeing things in the stores. And so I'm building her program in her life that way, which is another reason I wrote the book through the seasons, because the
Mhm.
seasons, and it just goes through the seasons of our life, and how every,
Mm.
we all know becoming a mother and being a mother, it was like, well, age 13 was definitely different than age 14 summer. And then when the
Yeah.
summer they first learned to drive and the summer they went away to school, every season changes. Every season in your life is different. How and I find that it's not so overwhelming that way. So we look at the season, we can bring in a curriculum, we can talk about things, what happens in our world, what happens when we change seasons, and then how we don't like certain seasons, or how things frustrate us about change. And that's how we really talk about it as a family, as well.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I would say, through the seasons, more or less. That way we're not biting off as much. Like my husband and I'll say, well, we'll really need to work on this fall, but you know what? Let's just wait till next summer to try that, airplane ride to the wherever, or we'll
Right.
road trip or um, maybe, trying to do this or that. Let's just see what she's ready for instead of
Yeah.
saying, we've got to get this done.
Yeah, I love that you just said that because I think that's an important, what is she ready for? We actually
Hmm.
have a couple of
Yeah.
comments coming in from our YouTube channel. Good morning. Do you have any tips for communicating with autistic twins? And unfortunately, it got cut off. The rest of it quite different too. And then we can't see the rest
Yeah.
of it. But communicating with autistic twins.
Mm.
Wow, I imagine that would be challenging because you're still talking about two completely different individuals at this point. Like, I think to your point, when you're talking about getting to know Allie and what are her likes and what are her dislikes and being able to anticipate, what's the best way to approach different topics and how to communicate effectively. I imagine if she were a twin, now you have double it. Now, you can't assume that they're going to have all of the exact same likes
Oh,
and
I would
dislikes.
imagine they would
You
be
know,
the exact opposite. Like if I
probably.
was just going to start to put that out there, like this one likes Mac. Well, and funny thing is, I didn't have autistic twins, but my kids are 22 months apart. So there was a
Mhm,
time where, Allie couldn't even, when my son was learning to eat his oatmeal,
mhm,
and she sensory wise couldn't even look at his face with oatmeal on
mm,
it.
okay.
She
Yeah.
would just freak out. So I
Yeah.
had this old-fashioned kitchen where I would, had Johnny in the hall, like the dining room hallway, and I would have Allie on the kitchen table here,
Yeah.
the wall, and I would feed him so I could do both things.
Oh,
So I would feed him
wow.
his
Okay.
oatmeal so she wouldn't see him. I mean, he really loved oatmeal, okay, but
Right.
and she wouldn't gag
Mm,
because
right.
again, I'm doing all this by myself, right?
Right.
And but I would say to that mom, first of all, you're certainly not alone.
Mm,
I would say that to be patient with yourself, and I would say to give the three of you as much freedom and space as possible. I find that the space and the freedom first brings a beautiful foundation to how to begin, because
mm,
everybody's energy is more still. And I find the autistic individual really, really relies on that safety.
mm,
So, I think parallel play is probably one
mhm,
of the better ideas. And I would say communicating without a lot of noise and language,
mm,
whether you're doing it in a parallel floor time where maybe you're the mediator, but there have maybe one has a different activity and one has, two different activities where they could overlap or you could
mhm,
switch and allow the kind of organic process to kind of come together and allow communication to be where their strengths are, which is
mm,
perhaps Allie always liked writing things down, so it was
mhm.
like we always had scraps of paper everywhere in the beginning, we
Oh,
were like when she learned to write and stuff, so it's like uh leave it here or don't leave it here,
mhm,
or do you want this mac and cheese or take it, you know
mhm,
um you know here's where we're going to go, this is what we're going to do, and checking it off, happy or sad and drawing, so I feel like that's another great way to communicate with double the, I would say, the work as a mom
mhm.
is just giving them power. So
Wow. Okay.
instead of course, you can always use the little peck symbols and things like that. But I always found, especially when Allie's acting out, when I give her power and I could say, here, Allie, do it, it takes her out of, oh, I was busy screaming about why I don't want to do this. And now I've got to think and I've got to say, I don't want to,
Mm,
but I can write,
yeah.
I don't want to. So then she's writing and she's getting some input, and then
Yeah.
she's like, I don't like that, or
Yeah.
yes, I want to. And so she has to line everything up and think, which she's capable of doing. It
Yeah.
gives her power, and then, okay, no, no, we're done.
Yeah.
But we won because I won't say we win, but we win as the parent because we connected.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't matter, now with your typical child, you may say, or we need another word for that typical child, but with that
Right.
typical child, we may say, you know, well, my son's not going to have some 5-hour conversation about me, but I know my sister's going to have a good 2-hour conversation with her daughter, um,
Right.
and of a back and forth. And that's connection, and that's very fulfilling. But
Mhm.
I feel like the way to address the loneliness and the connection and how, the closeness is really saying, like, I did connect with her today. It might have only been 1 minute, but you know what? I was grateful and thankful that she worked through that. And the other parts of the day, I may be statuesque with her, but, just sort of bringing her food, dropping off food, doing whatever. And then, so pockets of the day and just picking and choosing, how am I going to connect and how's it going
Wow.
to fulfill me, as well as fulfill her, so we can grow with this, and
Mhm.
I guess it's like it's become a practice. It's like leave the book on the bed, or that, when we give her a shower, or talking about things that she doesn't want to talk about. Wait, maybe when she's in the shower, because she's concentrating on water, but she's hearing me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're forgetting, not you, but people forget that she knows what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
She knew when I had the breast cancer, she knew that
Mhm.
there was something going on with that
Yeah.
woman who is always in my face, and now she's
Right.
upstairs and she
Right.
is not coming down to, like,
Mhm.
be like, would, put deodorant on and do all this stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
It does sound like there's you really do have to be forgiving of yourself. And earlier, like we said, being in the moment, but tuning in to, this parent who says they have twins, learning, just kind of being in tune and learning what is going to be their preferred way, of communicating and giving you messages and letting you know what's going on. And someone else on Facebook
yeah.
says that my son is autistic and it has been a very interesting journey. I'm sure that
Mm.
statement is something that most parents would probably agree with, an interesting journey. Um, so let's switch gears here. I know that you have a new book that was
Hmm.
just published. Can you take us through the book? What was the
Hmm.
goal for publishing this book, and what is it that you're sharing within the book?
The book is, essentially, I have it right here, and
Hmm.
we're doing some pre-orders this week, and then we are doing, the official launch is October 8th. But this is a family journal and a keepsake of, something that you can use throughout the seasons of your life. And
Hmm.
so it's spiral bound, and it has places to doodle and draw and create. Connection is
Yeah.
really what it's, all about. And I came up with this kind of uh, product, I guess I want to say, because I needed a way, and I wanted a way to hold the connections and the
Mm-hmm.
time, which, I just have described a couple to you,
Mm-hmm.
but to keep them in my memory with them,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and with my son. And I I said to myself, how usually it happens with us, we begin in a safe place where we're living, which
Mhm.
could be the kitchen table, the beach,
Mhm.
the outside on the grass, um, your family room, or any room that you really live with your family or your kids.
Mhm.
And um, just kind of approaching family time in a very unique way, where
Mm.
if you wanted to spend 2 hours, like, you know, my niece and my sister are going to have that conversation, you could spend it. And if you've got that 1 minute where you've got that one child who is like, eh, I'm good, and doesn't have the attention span. And then you've got that typical child who's like,
Mhm.
I need something to do.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
you're the mom who's like, I need something for them to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So um, that's really what the book is about. It's called The Art and the Voice of Autism. So one of Allie's gifts is Allie is an artist,
Mhm.
and I am her voice. And I took the pieces of art that she made and the different sayings that she has about life and musings and placed them into specific seasons and
Okay.
organized them to kind of define our seasons. So, for instance, in this one is called "We're All Spinning on the Same Ball,"
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's a picture of if you can see, it's people holding hands, Allie's
Okay.
art, and then it goes into each season has 3 or 4 different writings. So it goes into a writing, uh, me writing about us. We're all spinning on the same ball, and then a quote, which I use, "What a world we share," from
Mhm.
Barney. And then an artistic expression. Here we have "Create the Earth," where
Okay.
we're doing some artwork just with ripping
Yeah. Yeah.
because a lot of the kids can't really cut very well, and
Right.
ripping is good. And it's also very satisfying to a
Yeah.
typical kid where you're like, you just want me to rip this, you know?
You mean I'm allowed? I'm allowed to tear
Yeah.
this up?
And then we'll have an artistic expression. So this one has a beach picnic menu and how to create a beach picnic, easy, easy ways to bring a picnic or some idea together. So we go through a journal prompt in some way, in some other sections of the book, an artistic expression where you're painting rocks, perhaps in the summer, satisfying the most distracted family members, to um, doing holiday gift lists for our favorite people in our lives who are the caregivers and the people who come into this house and help me with Allie,
Mm.
to Allie's people who are out there in her world now, her art teacher, her yoga teacher, her grandmother, her, friends of mine who are just unbelievably supportive of my lifestyle and my calendar and,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know, being able to keep up socially and what I'm
Yeah.
able to have and do, but being able to be fulfilled as a girlfriend, it's
Mhm.
really important part of my life.
Mhm.
you know um
Wow.
and there were times probably when I would say that I would have rather not would have rather, but the loneliness and the burden of it all would have probably said, it's just too much. How can
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
that? How can I have, I don't want to say how can I have it all, but how can I have all
Right.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it kind of went back to becoming a blank face
Mhm.
in the society, to becoming a voice for Allie, a voice for myself, and a voice for all women, to and mothers and caregivers, to take a nice look at, how they're nurturing themselves.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So
Um,
the book is filled with all of those things, and it's spiral bound, and it's it's made to take wear and tear, and it's made
Mhm.
to take on the seasons of your life
Yeah.
where you can journal and look back. It has a great pocket in the back where you can actually hold some of the kids' artwork. And we have merchandise and stuff that goes along with our
Yeah.
book. We have shine tees, which I'm wearing, and we have art journals and mittens because Allie doesn't wear gloves, so we're coming out with mittens and just
Okay.
just really kind of ways to kind of wear your mittens, get cozy, get the mug, and sit down and at the kitchen table and have your little one scribble all over it, or have that adult with special needs work with their caregiver, and just even if they want to just have a conversation about the season. And then it gives something to the caregiver. The insights give to the caregiver. The
Yes.
artistic expression give to everyone.
Yeah.
The recipe and the other activities are ways that we can you can just engage anybody
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah.
but the insights really could give insight to you in your life. You don't have to
Right.
be a family with special needs to use this book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, that's
Right.
what I was thinking. I mean, so many of these concepts that you're talking about, could be so incredibly useful. I love that you're focusing on the family aspect of it and the
Hmm.
book, that you're just providing so many different, it's such a great variety of tools and ideas and topics and just ways of expressing, and you really
Hmm.
have taken the time to think through practically on an everyday basis. And I think that's why I appreciate that you've created this book versus any other book or any other website that you could go to. I think because of this book coming from your experience and your background and the knowledge that you've been able to develop over the years, you're really taking a holistic view at the family and just all the different ways through which communication and connection
Hmm.
can happen. And it's so important to focus on taking care of yourself and your relationships and learning how to be in the moment and adapting to
Hmm.
what needs to happen. I think this is just something that is going to be so helpful. I mean, to the
Thank
to
you.
the parent that was talking about, how do I communicate with twins? I mean, here you go, right here. I mean, it's you get two of them, right? For each
Yep.
twin, or and then it was Candy earlier. She the Facebook uh user who said that her son is autistic. It's been an interesting journey. So hi, Candy. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
I think it's just so incredibly powerful, and what a wonderful tool that you have created for families to use, because I think that's probably what has been a missing piece, and I'm sure you are well aware of that. So, anybody who's interested, where do they go to? You said it's available for
Hmm.
pre-order. Where do they go to pre-order? How do they get in touch with you? All of those good things.
So it will be for order, excuse me, it will be available for pre-order midweek this week
Hmm.
at motherasana.com. And that's our
Hmm.
website. Yep. And that's where you can check us out. You can check on Allie living her best life.
Yeah.
That, going out in the world with her coaches and people that, we've invited to be part of our family, to be with her and share our lives with her, with them. And the products are on the website, and you can look for me, to be doing these types of talks going forward, and um, trying to just expand, bringing the book to life, I hope,
Hmm.
is a goal, by having places where we'll be able to give these activities to the younger individuals in a classroom, or perhaps the older individuals in a social skills group of some
Yeah.
sort, just
Yeah.
to inspire connection with teachers, art teachers especially, since
Yeah.
we love using art as a way of
Mhm.
communicating.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. So if you are someone, maybe you're not thinking that you would need this book for yourself, but if you have a friend, and like
Hmm.
Gina was saying, in the school system, if you would like to gift this, to someone, to a teacher friend in the school system, highly, highly recommend that you do that. Wow, this hour went by really
Really
fast.
quick.
It went by so fast.
Yeah.
I am so appreciative of you and the work that you're doing. And I tell you what, Gina, bless you and your family.
Thank you.
I think it's, I know it's been challenging and it's been a difficult road, but being a beacon of light, if you will, for other families and for other, parents and specifically mothers who are just now beginning this journey. I think to be able to hear your story and to be able to know that they are not alone is probably the most powerful gift that you can
Hmm.
give anyone. So I thank you for that. And I know there are others out there who thank you for that as well. And this will not be our last conversation. I really want to
No,
check in with you.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe this time next year after the book's been out for a while, I'd like to kind of
I would
catch
love
back up
that.
and see
Yes.
how things are going. Are there any final thoughts or anything that you would like to say before we wrap up?
I just think that just to the parents, to the mothers, to the caregivers, I just want to say, just always remain open, open your heart. There's so many instances when you're sure you are the teacher, but you really need to be the student. So
Mm,
give them a chance to guide you, show you the way a little bit,
wow.
because
Wow.
they will, they will,
Yeah.
they,
That's
they,
beautifully
they
said.
do. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually a lesson for all of us, right? It's something
yeah,
we think
it
we're the
is.
teacher.
I do
Sometimes
have
we
to
need to
use that on the other one.
be. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
you know, I think that that gives you freedom in your heart.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you. With that, we're
Thank
going
you.
to, yeah, thank you so much again. And thank you to those of you who watched the live stream and to those of you who participated, whether you put in a comment or you asked a question. I really appreciate when you engage and participate in the episodes because it really does bring in a different element for us, not only for me, but for the guest as well, to know that,
Mm,
you're engaged and you're listening and that we are making a connection. And
that's
that's
great.
pretty much
Yeah.
what this episode is all about, making a
Yeah.
connection. All right. So, everyone, have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and all of the information that we talked about today, as far as the website and how to pre order the book, I will make sure that they are available in the show notes. So, everyone, take care and have a good one.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.